Heyo, it's Liara, and welcome to Redstone Foundations, a series where we'll be learning the basics of redstone together. There's a lot of reasons to use automatic farms in Minecraft. They can be great time savers, they can help you get the most out of your resources, and if you're forgetful like me, they mean you'll never run out of things you need, even if you forget to take care of your farm. But to make something automatic, you usually need redstone. And most redstone tutorials out there are the results of years of refining designs to make the most compact and efficient design possible. These are amazing for advanced players, but can be hard to follow for those of us less familiar with the technology or who care more about building something quickly than maximizing efficiency. That's why I put together this tutorial, to help you make things that just get it done, plain and simple. Along the way, I'll explain why the things we're doing work the way they do. These farms are all designed for Bedrock, but most will work in Java too, either as is, or with simple modifications that I'll also show along the way. Today we're going to start with truly automatic farms. These are things you can just set and forget, and the only thing they need from you to work is for you to be in the area. Many of them work on very similar principles as one another, so we'll go from the simplest to the most complex. If you're only looking for one specific farm, please check out the chapters in the description below to skip ahead. Alright, so let's get started. The three farms we're going to be looking at today are bamboo, sugarcane, and kelp. Right away, you may be able to notice the similarity between these three. They all are plants that grow in one wide sections. They grow over time without you needing to do anything for them. And if you break them off at the top, with time they'll grow back. That means all of them are perfect for making piston-based farms for. So we are going to make fully automatic piston-powered farms for these. And because it is the most simple and does not need any water or anything involved, we are going to start with bamboo. Now, here is a list of things that we're going to need for the farms that we're working on today. Not all these will be used on all of the farms, and I'll be showing a couple of variants along the way that may use some parts and not others. So for example, the rails will only be used on some. But here's a list of what we're looking at. First of all, we want a block to just plain build with. Personally, I like to use polished blocks for redstone things because they are very clearly man-made. You don't have to worry about somebody accidentally breaking into them. And because they are easy identifiable for you to come into again and see, oh yeah, that's what I was working on. I also am choosing one block specifically just for putting redstone on. So throughout this project today, you'll be seeing andesite used as a structural block, and then diorite used as the block to actually run redstone on when redstone lines are needed. We're also going to need dirt because these need to grow on something. We're going to get some glass to encase these in. We need the actual pistons and observers in order to run the farm. Some redstone dust to transfer the signal through. And once we've got the rest of it set up, we'll go ahead and grab hoppers, chests, and water in order to collect what we are growing. So today we're going to go ahead and start with that bamboo farm. Now, you can actually make these most any size, from a single width wide to really as long as you'd like. If you only have one observer, you will be able to go a maximum of 15 blocks in either direction from it. But if you're using multiple observers, then you can actually go as far as you'd like. But for convenience sake, both for demonstration and for the fact that we'll be using water as one of our collection devices today, we're going to go ahead and stick to 8 blocks wide for our design. Now, I am doing this up above ground level so that you can see what's going on underneath it more easily. And because in a flat world like this, I've only got 3 or 4 blocks of space below the surface, so this is our pretend ground level. You can do it up above the ground like this, or if you'd prefer, you can do it actually in or even under the ground. But just so that we can see the cross section of it a little bit better, we're doing it above the ground like this. Alright, so we've got 8 spots to plant the bamboo on. And we're going to go ahead and take our 8 pistons here, put them on down, and those are what are going to actually knock out our bamboo for us. Now, we're going to want to grab an observer and point it in towards where the bamboo is going to be planted. If you are light on resources, you can do this with a single observer, and I'll show you that version first. But you do also have the option to do it with more observers if you do have that resource available. So the way that our grumpy friends, the observers, work here is that if something changes in front of them, they go ahead and put a signal out the back. And that will transfer to the redstone dust or whatever other redstone reading anything you have back here, whether that's another observer, or it's a light block, anything like that. So actually, in order to show you how this is working a little bit more easily, we'll go ahead and put a lamp back here. We'll stick a piece of dirt on the front of there so it lights up. Take it back off, it lights back up again. And so you can see that when you have bamboo here, if that grows up in front of there, it's going to go ahead and activate that. Well, what we want here is we want for that signal to actually activate the piston there. So, and we've got our die right here to be what we're running the redstone on. If we do it like this, that powers the block right here. So anytime that you put a power source on top of a block, it will actually power the blocks that are all touching that one. So I could actually put pistons, so I could actually put pistons on any side of this. And when we update it, they're all going to activate. Because, as you saw, that is causing a signal to go through there. So that's good news here because it means that now we've got a signal that when this bamboo decides that it's time to grow up there, it's going to activate that piston. Nice and simple. And that signal we can actually transfer, as I mentioned, a total of 16 blocks. So since this is one block, we can go up to 15 in each direction. So the 7 more to cover all of those is no sweat at all. So again, when that grows up, now it's going to fire the whole row of pistons. And that means that anything that's planted along here is going to get knocked off by it. Now, obviously, just having the pistons like this, breaking that, does not mean that you actually get the bamboo anywhere. At the present moment, it just winds up kind of sitting here. So we're going to need a way to go ahead and collect that bamboo. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start by putting a spot for this to be contained here. And today we are going to use the simplest way of collecting things, namely water in a hopper. So we're going to come on over here, grab our bucket of water, grab a hopper, and of course grab a chest to put it into. And for the sake of this one, we are going to wind up putting this chest here to collect it all in. We can actually put the chest pretty much anywhere around here that we'd like. So if you want it nice and hidden behind here or underneath here, you can of course do that. But with the chest down, we can get back here. We can go ahead and shift click into the back of that to get the hopper attached to the chest. And make sure when you do that that you do see that the hopper is actually pointing into the chest. and not just down into the ground like that. So we want it to be an over, not a down. Unless, of course, the chest is underneath it. From there, we're going to put another hopper behind that, also connected into there. And we're going to go ahead and go to the other end of this row here, put down our water, and it goes ahead and goes the full length of this. I'll say advantage of doing this is 8 blocks long. That's the maximum distance that water can flow for us, and it means that if something falls into this water, it goes ahead and slides on down there. So we're going to go ahead and pretend grow a bunch of our bamboo here, just for demonstration's sakes. And we are also going to go ahead and get this a little bit higher up, because as you can imagine, right now if I were to activate those pistons, it might just go flying off over here. There we go. That should be tall enough that we shouldn't have to worry about the bamboo going places it shouldn't. We're going ahead and grabbing any bamboo that was in here out of there, and coming up here to, again, artificially grow this just so that we can demonstrate it. And there we go. Now that was a lucky one. Every single piece of that bamboo did get out onto here, but there aren't all. But at times you may find that the bamboo does land right here on the dirt. There are ways to go ahead and fix that I will go ahead and demonstrate as we move on to the sugarcane one. But for right now, it's just kind of one of those risks of it, of doing a simpler farm versus a more complicated one. Now, the easiest way you can improve efficiency on this is to go ahead and put observers down every single one on this row here. And that means that anytime any of this bamboo grows, it's going to activate an observer and send a signal down the whole line instead of just waiting for one of them. This is nice because it means that, say that this one here is already at 1, and that one's grown a bit, and that one's grown a bit, but the one down there at the end hasn't grown yet. Well, when this one decides it's going to go ahead and grow, it still goes ahead and activates. And there's some of the bamboo on the ground that I mentioned. So again, we'll see how to fix that in a little while. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and pretty this up a little bit. One last thing before I move on to the next design, and that's to keep in mind that mobs can still spawn down here when it comes to many of these plants. So if you would like to pretty the place up a little bit, and also make sure that it is mob proof by, say, replacing these with that, you absolutely can. Alternatively, you can just point and laugh when zombies get stuck inside your farm. That's acceptable too. So for our sugarcane farm, we're going to start with essentially the same exact design. We've got our row of pistons placed 1 block above the dirt. Please do remember to leave it 1 block above so that there is room for the plants to remain grown at the bottom. We've got our observers, we've got it powering the whole line here, and we've got our collection system, though I did go ahead and drop it down 1 before I brought it into the chest. Only difference is that you can't place sugarcane without having a water source. So if we just go ahead and put a water source down like we did for the other one for collection, there it is. That's pretty much all you gotta do. But thing is, sugarcane grows a lot more slowly than bamboo. So dealing with this situation where you wind up with a couple of pieces left over, it's a lot more annoying when it comes to sugarcane. It's you really want to make sure that every single piece of sugarcane is being picked up. So we're going to do things a little bit differently. First of all, we're going to go ahead and hide our water source back here. Put water back in here. And keep in mind also that if you did want to, you could leave it open like this here without anything underneath the pistons, but that does run the risk of blocks getting knocked back this way, and that's not always going to be great. Alright, so that means we can go block off the one on this side, and sugarcane's still planted. But how now are we going to be getting the sugarcane into the hopper, I hear you asking? Well, we're going to go ahead and switch to using rails for this now. So to do a hopper minecart pickup system, you're going to need a minecart with a hopper, regular rails and powered rails. You'll also need something to power the rails, either a lever or a block of redstone depending on how it's set up, or you could also put a redstone torch underneath the block. Whatever method of powering works best for you and your situation. You're also going to go ahead and need hoppers and chests for things to go into. I also grabbed some dirt and a slab just in case you've never seen how it is that hopper minecarts versus regular hoppers work. So if we go ahead and set ourselves down a pair of chests here, one there, one there. Put a hopper going into each, and then we've got a ground up here that we want to be pulling stuff from. So if we do want to go ahead and collect stuff from above here, it's not as simple as just putting another hopper there, because that is not going to get sucked through into there. Now, if this were instead a half slab, or anything else that is shorter than a full block, which can include things like enchantment tables, cakes, trapdoors, even soul sand, then items will go ahead and go through into the hopper there, so you'll get the chest down there. But as I said, if you've got full blocks, it's not going to be pulled through. So you need something else that can pull things through. And that is where our friend the hopper minecart comes in. So you have to put down a rail first to put a minecart down. We put down that rail, we put down that minecart, and if we want to, we can actually also destroy the rail afterwards, if you were to want to use it as just a stationary thing. But in the case of what we're going to do in a moment, it's going to be moving around still, so we'll go ahead and leave it there. Now, if I go ahead and throw an item up top here, it gets pulled straight down into it. And that's because the hopper minecarts can pull things from the surface of a full block, unlike the regular hoppers. So what we're going to wind up doing is setting up a hopper minecart to run around down here and pick up anything that is there on the level with the sugarcane or the blocks next to it. Now, minecarts will travel at two different velocities. There is one that they will travel at if they've got something in them, whether that something is a player, a mob, a hopper, or a chest, or anything else that you can possibly think of to put into a minecart. If you are trying to keep a minecart that does have something in it going at the momentum it was at, then you need a way to power it at least every 24 blocks. Now, going around corners and stuff will slow it down, and just overall, I don't like to take those kinds of risks, so I usually recommend more like 1 every 8 blocks minimum, or even closer than that. So we're going to have this track here that goes around the corner like that, continues on down, and for the end over here, we're going to want to make sure that we do the end first. Otherwise, it's going to become a pain to try and get it connected up. But of course, we do need to go ahead and get that power source in here somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and knock out those blocks, put ourselves down a redstone source there, and we're going to go ahead and actually put a second one with it on both of those just to make sure there's enough power. We'll put our hopper minecart on down and nudge it so that it heads on its way. Now, if you did want to set this up so that instead you could control when it turned on and off, what we could do here is have this one be a powered one, so it's always on, but this one here, since it's not directly connected to that one, is not powered. So if we go ahead and attach a lever out here, we can actually turn that on and off. So now if we go ahead and put on the minecart there, set that going on its merry way, and it will keep going back and forth until we tell it to do otherwise. What this can be good for is if you know that the farm's already full, or if you've got a neighbor that complains about the noise, or if you've noticed that the minecart gets stuck sometimes. Doing this so that it's not active when you're not around or don't want it running can be really handy. Now, because this track runs over a hopper, that will dump off anything that is inside the hopper minecart into that hopper as it goes past. In the case of a farm that's only going to be producing a small amount like this should be plenty. A single hopper should be enough for it. But if you do need to create more space, you can go ahead and put as many of these along here as you'd like. So, for example, if we now go ahead and now let's get ourselves a whole stack of quartz slabs here, okay? And we're just going to put these everywhere. Of course, this is probably going to be more than a stack because we are in creative here. Alright, so if I go ahead and kick that on, it's going to go through there, grab all those, but it's not going to be able to drop off every single one of them every time. It's only going to be dropping off one or two each time that it passes over these, depending on how long it is over them. So it's actually preferable to have things be a little bit slower when it's dropping off. But again, as you've seen, we've been here for how long? The sugarcane still hasn't grown yet. Sugarcane grows very slowly right now on bedrock, so this should definitely keep up. In later episodes, I'll go ahead and show you how to do a full unloading system, which will stop the minecart at the end, empty everything out of it, and then send it back on its merry way. But for right now, as I said, everything that we're building is small enough that that's going to be okay. So we'll go ahead and fill in our second row there. Close this back off. And there we go. We've got our sugarcane farm with a hopper minecart collection system underneath it. And we'll go ahead here, make the glass higher like we did with the other one. And hopefully by the time that this is done, we'll actually have a proper demonstration of it. But just like with the other one, we'll go ahead and add a couple of extra sugarcane on down here and set one of them off so that you can have a demonstration of it. There you go, they're all picked up and they're slowly coming on in here. Okay, and our last farm that we're going to cover that uses pistons is Kelp. And right away, I'm sure you can recognize the big difference between Kelp and the other two that we've worked on today. It's underwater. Fortunately, the vast majority of redstone, except for dust and in certain cases rails, still works underwater. So observers are still going to observe just fine, pistons are still going to push, and we are going to be able to use the same principles that we've been using so far in order to make a kelp farm. So as far as growing and harvesting goes, kelp works pretty much the same way as the bamboo and the sugarcane, just underwater. Kelp will grow up, the observers will detect it, the pistons will go ahead and get the signal from back there and knock the kelp on down. But that's where things get complicated. You see, these days, stuff actually floats in water in Minecraft. If we were still in the pre-aquatic update, no, If we're still in the pre-aquatic update style of things, then we could just go ahead and run a minecart like that one underneath this as well. But we're not, so we're going with a slightly different design here, where it's 3 deep instead of 2 deep inside here. What we're also going to have to do from there is make sure that the water cannot get into this front section here. Now, mind you, there are other ways to go ahead and do this, but as I mentioned at the start of this series, the goal here is not to worry about the most efficient way of doing things. It is just having a solution that works and is easy to understand so that you can then take the skills you learned from it and create your own redstone from there. Of course, one of the easiest ways to go ahead and block off water is just by putting a sign there. It won't be able to go any further, though you do have to be careful because if you do put a sign into a water source block, it will not block it off. It will just go ahead and become a waterlogged sign. But obviously having signs on this whole front window is both time consuming and kind of ugly. So there are two good ways to do this. One is to go ahead and have 2 sets of this that are facing in towards each other so that the ugly waterless section is hidden away in the middle. Or what I'm going to go ahead and choose to do today is to knock out this front row other than at the very bottom there, which I actually may replace with the andesite. And we are actually going to use glass panes along here instead. The glass panes look a lot better than just having a row of signs on there, and it means that if I put water over here, it doesn't fall down there, but anything that is tossed into the water still can. So we're going to go ahead and fill all this up with water until we are above the level of the observers. And the whole time we're going to be being very careful not to click onto the glass panes because they are waterloggable and that will go everywhere. Please note that the piston's doing this, so it's completely normal and natural. That's just them reacting to the water changing in front of them. Same as they would anything else changing in front of them. Okay, now when we get to this top level, we're going to only put water along the back side here. We're not going to put water on the front. And that means that we'll go ahead and have it flowing like this. It flowing like that means if we have any items that are tossed in there, when they get up to the surface here, they'll go ahead and get pushed forward. And then we're going to have a water source down here flowing on over that direction, just as we have on the previous designs. And now, if anything flows on up here and is in that row right there, we'll be able to watch it come up to the top here, get pushed forward, slam into the glass pane wall, and go down there. So we can now watch the kelp do the same thing the previous ones have done. Come on up to the top there, and they swoop pretty fast. It's going to be very rare that you lose any blocks doing this. If you feel like you are losing any, then you can actually expand this out one further so that there is more room for the blocks to float upwards. But for the most part, this is going to work pretty well for you. And there again, everything is put right into the chest there for you. Now again, all of these can be designed with any blocks that suit your fancy, that work for your style. I do, as I mentioned, recommend picking blocks for anything that is covering up water or holds redstone, or otherwise it would be a pain in the butt to go ahead and replace if somebody who knocks it out, with blocks that are clearly man-made. So that can be colored terracotta, it can be polished blocks, it can be bricks, anything like that, that it's going to be very obvious if somebody goes ahead and mines through to it that, oh, I shouldn't knock this out. For that reason, glass can also work great for it. But other than that, there's not much else to really worry about keeping in mind. As mentioned, the bamboo does grow a lot faster, so we actually have quite a bit of it already versus the sugarcane that we still only have the demonstration amount from. Of course, these can also be mixed and matched, so you could go ahead and use the minecart design to pick up the bamboo. This also means that you can do things where you have them pushing in towards each other. This can cause weird situations. A lot of these farms can also be stacked in various ways. So for example, you can take the kelp design and you can actually tier it over. So the next level of kelp is sitting on top of here, and so on. Or where you can have two sets of it facing in towards each other. And in a lot of cases, it is very nice to have it contained in like that. In cases where you're dealing with a water source being a limit to your size, remember that you can also go ahead and have another water source coming from the other side pointing in towards the middle, or that you can even have one water source flowing out in both directions towards separate collection systems on both sides. So keep in mind that if anything lands ever so perfectly in just the block that is floating in both directions, it's not technically a flowing block, so you can occasionally have things get stuck in there where they are not going to move. So do be careful with that. But as mentioned, sometimes, having one or two pieces get lost in things is worth these farm being much simpler than trying to figure out a lossless version and the sheer amount of time that can consume. Okay, and I think that just about wraps us up. Here's another quick look at the supply list if you do need to see it again, just for your own reference. But I think that we are all set on things for today. So if you have any questions about any of today's farms, don't hesitate to go ahead and ask me down in the comments. If you're curious on how to optimize these more, for example, by using bone meal to go ahead and grow these so you don't have to wait for them, well, that's going to be covered in another video if I continue this series. So definitely hit the like button to let me know that you're liking the series, that you're enjoying hanging out with me while we go over the basics of redstone and start from the foundation on it. And as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. So if you are new around here, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. The next video we're probably going to be making will be about farms that, while they can harvest automatically for you, you will need to go ahead and replant or have some other small amount of interaction with. But it will talk about why, hey, there goes the bamboo again. It will talk about why it's more convenient still to go ahead and have that. Later videos that I have jotted down do go into things like mob farms, both passive and hostile ones, smelters and smelter arrays, which we have multiple types we can work with here on Bedrock, so that's wonderful. And like clocks and auto dispensers, which would go into the bone meal thing I mentioned for these. So definitely, I am looking forward to building this together with all of you. Take care, everybody. Toodles!